This will be the build video for this depth probe from this 1970s TV show, The $6 Million Man. I'll just do a short demo here. The controller is a 2.4 gig that I bought off AlieExpress. Turret operates. The dome goes up and down. I'm going to start taking it apart to show you how it's put together. I won't actually build it. I'll just take it apart, and that should give you enough information to build it if you want to. First thing about taking it apart, and the last thing about putting it together, is you got to have the dome up. And the reason for that is I'm going to pull this turret off, which is just held on by magnets, and then slide that forward. You can see there's a wheel collar in here on a brass rod that pushes this up and down. The wheel collar is engaged by this Scotch yoke. It's run up and down by this crank back here. That's all it takes to raise and lower that. The turret is spun around by a gear back in there. It's kind of hidden. There's two LEDs on here. The LEDs are wired in parallel. Each one has its own 120 ohm resistor. I'm not sure the LEDs were worth the trouble, but they do give some indication that the power is on through these little windows. I'm going to turn it off, start taking it apart. Anything else I wanted to show? No. We'll take the to take it apart, you're going to have to, well, to build it, you really need to have connectors for all these wires, because you want to be able to take the top of this little motor mount part off. And all the two of the motors and the LEDs are mounted to the motor mount. And we're going to, let's just use this so it don't take me forever. I'm going to take that motor mount part off. There's 3 screws holding it on. 3mm by 8mm, I believe. I think you could get by with just 3mm by 8mm screws. There might be a couple that need to be longer. You can see this comes off. There's a little plate here that hooks to hold this N20 motor on. This plate hooks under this little thing that sticks out right here, held on by 1 screw. This one motor is held in by this plate, which got a little lip on top. It's held on by 2 screws. The LEDs are just shoved down in there. The crank is pushed on to that N20 motor so that this and the end of the shaft are flush. When you print this crank out, do a modifier that makes sure that this is all 100% in here. The little knob here that sticks out, you want it solid, so 100% infill there. I'll go ahead and take that Scotch yoke apart so you can see it. You can see this plate just hooks under there. That's all there is to that. The motor comes out. There's the Scotch yoke and the crank. You can see on the bottom, this motor is hooked up to this gear. And that gear sits down in here and engages this ring gear, which will come out now if you wanted to take it out. There's a slight rise here as a kind of a bearing surface. Wire management is kind of important on this little dude, because you don't want those wires getting getting hung up under anything. It's supposed to slide smoothly. What next? Let's just take this off. See that the way that is. The wiring, frankly, is the hardest part of this project. Now we'll take the bottom off. I haven't glued these arms on yet. They're just loose. They kind of snap in though. This part here has to be printed with a lot of support on the inside. It prints just like it's sitting. So that's probably the hardest part of the print. There's place for 4 screws here. I've only got 2 of them in. The little tail wheel is held on by 2 more screws. There's a 9.5 millimeter ball bearing in here. I have included a part that's called tail wheel, no bearing, I believe it is, where this ball bearing is just modeled in plastic. So you just print out that part and screw it on here. You won't need the bearing then. I'm not going to take that bearing off. And this just comes out like this. Here's the, I think I called this part the fender because that's what I called it on the Dalek. And these parts here, I believe they'll still come out. Can't remember. No, maybe not. But they just fit in here like this. This was all very hard to model. And you would glue it in the final version. This part here, these little, there's a piece of brass rod, 40 millimeters long, I believe it was, 1/8 inch brass rod. I just used welding rod. You could get by with 3 millimeter. These 2 bald spiky things, it's printed in 2 different halves. You can probably see I didn't do a very good job lining them up. So you just glue them under a brass rod, glue this little thing here under a brass rod. I painted it all chrome. I believe this will come out now. Yeah, won't come out with the bald spikes on it though. This is just glued in. There's 2 of these, they print like this. They're just mirrors of one another. Like I say, that was all very hard to model. Put that back in there before I lose it. Set that aside. Here's the 2 TT motors, all metal. The switch is a 19 millimeters on center. The mounting holes are. I just run 3 millimeter screws to hold it on. This is the battery box from the Dalek that I made before. It has the same little contacts that I used. You can get them on Amazon. Make your own battery box. This is the receiver that came with this remote for, I think I paid $8 for it. It's a really good deal. It does have a power switch on it. You'll want to leave that power switch in the on position because you're going to use your own switch. Turn that remote off. The LEDs, it does work, but you can't see it. Obviously, it's covered up. The battery box is got some diagrams on it, how to wire it. Jumper from here to here, you can see that. Get a pointer. You can see that right here. And then jumper back here. There's a marker for the negative and the positive terminal. I've just got this held on by a piece of double-sided tape. Let's see. These wires come off in pairs for each motor. That's pretty straightforward. You want to do a little playing with this before you actually stick it in something though, and make sure you know how it works. Let's go ahead and I'll show you inside the battery compartment. This was print in place. This part and this part print on the build plate just like that. This is the hinge is modeled in. Works really well. Here's your batteries. When you use super glue, that white stuff gets on everything from its drying process. I'll take a battery out so you can see. I got super glued the yellow box to this part. I need a screwdriver. Yeah, that one will work. These are the battery contacts you put in there. You buy them on Amazon. The only thing about the battery contacts is they have a little barb that sticks out. It's just a bent metal piece. You just have to flatten that out with your pliers before you shove them in there. See what else do I want to say. With the batteries are marked polarity and everything, just like you would expect, just like any toy you would buy. Anything else I wanted to say? I've got parts list on the Thingiverse page, so hopefully I've covered anything you need. Printing it's fairly straightforward. This is the hardest part because of all the support there is to remove. I used tree supports and normal supports. They're both about the same as far as the paint. They're both a pain to get off. Either one will work. These windows are printed in clear. This dome prints, or not dome, turret prints like this, with this on the build plate. There's the dome is one part. Inside in here is I think I call it the pivot. That's one part. This here is a part, and this nut is also a different part. So you kind of just put those all together and tighten that nut down to hold it in place. This is an 1/8 inch wheel collar. Oh, one thing I wanted to show about assembling it. To get this distance right, the brass rod runs up into the dome. I hope you can see that. The dome down in here. There's a stock right here, but that brass rod goes up in there. You may have to drill that out to get it to fit good. Put it up on there all the way. What you're shooting for is this spacer, which I've got as a file. You want the spacer in there, tighten the wheel collar down, and the spacer, tighten the wheel collar down against the spacer, and the shaft to come out here fairly even on the end. Won't hurt if it's a little over or under, but don't have it hanging out too far. It'll interfere with this Scotch yoke. See if I can remember. I got the dimensions written down. That brass rod was 60 millimeters. This brass rod is 60 millimeters long. You can kind of see the dimensions there. It's supposed to hang out 35.5 millimeters from. I can't remember where that's from though. But anyway, make your brass rod 60 millimeters long. Glue it up into the dome, and then go from there. As you can see, that's how it's supposed to work. Well, that'll come out right as far as the Scotch yoke and everything working. The other brass rod for making the spiked, this right here, it's just 40 millimeters long. I should explain some of the wiring, I guess. The LEDs, one of the negative wire comes off the just the negative battery terminal over here. The positive wire, I've just got hooked to this. I've soldered it to the back side of where the positive wire comes into the receiver board. The receiver board is wired just straight from the negative battery terminal. The positive wire goes up through the front. There's a little like trough for the wires to run through from the front to the back to keep them out of the way of everything operating. But that positive wire goes up to the switch, gets switched and runs back to the receiver board. Like I said, I think I said that the positive wire for the LEDs just is soldered onto the bottom of the receiver board, positive. The way I have mine set up, wire management is kind of a tricky thing on this. I've got them so with the LEDs and a pair of wires for the turret rotation come out over here on this side. Try putting it together again. The LEDs do have a polarity, so you need to mark your wires. One of them black. See if it works. Polarity on this motor doesn't matter because it's just going up and down. I got that one right. I think the hardest thing about this project is the wires. It's definitely kind of get them stuffed around. You probably want to, when you build yours, if you build one, you want to use some hot glue or something to get these things tucked away. I didn't want to do that because I knew I was taking mine apart. If it's hanging up, it's almost certainly because you got the wires hanging up in there against the turret when it rotates. Well, all the files are on Thingiverse and Printables and places like that. See anything else I wanted to say? I think that's about it. Thanks for watching.